She will make you feel like the man she waited her whole life for, right before she drains your worth in silence. This video isn't about hate. It's about precision, because behind the compliments, the sudden mood swings and the confusing coldness are signs of a low-value woman most men never see until she's already eroded his self-respect. Today we broke that fog. You'll learn how female psychology hides manipulation behind emotion, how emotional control protects your masculine frame, and why stoic detachment isn't distance, it's defense. This isn't about judging women. It's about recognizing what your peace is worth. Because a woman who constantly tests your loyalty, rejects your standards, and feeds off your confusion doesn't need love. She needs access. And when a man can't spot the cost of access, he pays in self-worth. So the question becomes, how many times will you betray yourself just to feel chosen? Point number 1, over-emotional chaos used to control you. Have you ever hugged a woman and somehow felt more alone afterward? There's a kind of silence inside some embraces, not comfort, no connection, but an invisible audit of your soul, as if she's not hugging you to feel love, but to measure how tightly you'll hold on and how afraid you are to let go. Most men never spot this because they're too busy trying to prove they're worthy of staying, but sometimes behind softness is strategy, and what feels like affection is a quiet test of control. She pulls close not to feel safe, but to see if you still chase, still crave, still bleed. And in that moment, your reaction reveals more than your words ever could. This is the unspoken terrain of female psychology, where affection isn't always love, but leverage. And if you lack emotional discipline, you'll trade your peace for the illusion of being needed. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That isn't a quote, it's a weapon. Because when you understand that even love can be used as a mirror to reflect your own desperation back at you, you start seeing the difference between emotional connection and emotional dependence. The Stoics lived this through action, not theory. Take Epictetus, once a slave, given no power over his body, only his response. He learned that true control isn't found in escaping hardship, but in remaining unmoved by it. Now think modern, you're sitting next to her. She leans in, touches you, softly says she's worried you've been distant. Your chest tightens. You haven't been. But now you're explaining yourself, proving yourself, calming her emotions like they're your responsibility. And just like that, the frame is gone. Emotional control surrendered. Masculine value compromised. You didn't notice the shift because she didn't raise her voice. She hugged you. That's the brilliance of it. Not because she's evil, but because relationship power, dynamics are rarely verbal. And if you don't embody stoic detachment, if you flinch at rejection, if you seek reassurance in intimacy, you will always chase what was meant to orbit you. This is where emotional discipline becomes more than theory. It's silent. It's breath. It's not pulling tighter when she loosens her grip. It's understanding that some hugs are not connection, but calibration of your emotional need, of your masculine control. So here's your challenge. Next time you feel tested through softness, don't react. Don't prove, don't perform. Just observe. Does the hug feel grounding or hollow? Does it pull you back into your strength or out of it? Because sometimes the most dangerous manipulation is the one that feels the most like comfort. And if a woman's embrace makes you question your value as a man, was it ever love? But what happens when the tests aren't physical? What if the next one comes through silence instead of touch? Point number 2, constant testing that erodes your frame. Have you ever felt like you were being graded and the rules kept changing? You text her with sincerity. She replies with coldness. You open up to show depth. She pulls back, says you're too much. You pull back to stay composed. She accuses you of being distant. Every move questioned, every word weighed, but the punishment isn't loud. It's subtle. Icy glances, short replies, shifting tones. It's the slow erosion of your masculine frame, not by force, but by confusion. And this is the part men rarely admit. You're not trying to win her. You're trying not to lose her. Most men don't see the trap because they confuse emotional tension with connection. But in reality, they're being tested. Not to see if they're right, but to see if they'll break. This is female psychology at its most refined. Unspoken, unpredictable, and designed to expose where your self-worth is still borrowed. Seneca warned, "If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Translation? If you don't know your internal direction, any emotional shift from her will steer you off course, and that's where your masculine identity begins to rot under the illusion that pleasing her will anchor her. But you weren't made to anchor her. You were made to stand still in storms. The Stoics trained for this exact thing, not through relationship guides, but through fire. Marcus Aurelius was tested by betrayal from his own general, Avidius Cassius, someone he trusted with everything. He didn't retaliate with rage. He didn't beg for loyalty. He held his frame, stayed in command, and prepared to confront what was, not what he wished. Now look at the modern battlefield. You say no to something, she gets quiet. You don't reply instantly, she posts a thirst trap. You calmly enforce a boundary, she calls you controlling. And in that moment, you're not dealing with a person. You're facing an emotional weapon, crafted by modern conditioning, loaded with fear and fired at your sense of self. Without Stoic detachment, you'll mistake this for drama. But with it, you'll recognize the game. Because emotional control doesn't mean withdrawal. It means not being moved by manipulation. It means understanding that your value as a man doesn't increase with her praise or decrease with her silence. So next time you feel that test, pause. Don't chase. Don't explain. Observe the emotional pattern. Ask yourself, is she reacting to my truth or testing how far I'll bend from it? Because a man who bends under pressure gets reshaped into something he can't respect. And when you lose your self-respect, it's only a matter of time before she does too. But what if the disrespect doesn't look like rebellion? What if it hides behind soft words that poison your purpose? Point number 3, disrespect disguised as honesty. Has a woman ever told you something just being honest, and it left a wound you couldn't explain? She says she doesn't like how you dress, but it's just feedback. She compares you to an ex but claims she's over him. She questions your purpose, mocks your ambition, challenges your masculinity, but smiles when she says it, as if it's love wrapped in concern. And you stay silent because you don't want to seem weak, because you've been trained to interpret her criticism as closeness. But let's call it what it is. Disrespect disguised as honesty is a psychological cut, and most men bleed quietly. It's not the words themselves that erode you. It's the way they're delivered. With softness, timing, and just enough emotional camouflage to confuse your instinct, you begin to wonder if your sensitivity is the problem. It's not. Your boundaries are being tested and your frame is under siege. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This is Stoic detachment at war. Not silence out of weakness, but silence from awareness. Because when her honesty violates your worth, and you flinch inwardly but not outwardly, you're not being calm, you're being conquered. The Stoics didn't fear truth, but they filtered it. They knew not every opinion deserved entry into their soul. Take Cato, who walked into rooms full of corrupt men. He listened but didn't absorb. He heard but didn't surrender his character. That's masculine control, not reacting to every verbal dart disguised as advice. Now modernize that. You're with her at dinner. She makes a joke about how much money you make. You laugh it off, but something inside tightens. Later, she says you take things too seriously, and suddenly you feel like the problem. But here's the Stoic truth. Not all disrespect is loud. Some of it comes dressed as intimacy. And if you lack emotional discipline, you'll internalize it, thinking her coldness is your failure. This is where relationship power dynamics twist silently. She speaks without reverence. You allow it without resistance. And over time, your masculine value erodes. Not because you weren't enough, but because you stopped protecting yourself. So here's your inner challenge. Next time she speaks under the banner of just being honest, don't absorb. Listen without submission. Let her words enter your ears, but not your identity. Because your response teaches her how far she can push. And if a woman sees she can erode your frame through subtle digs, she'll keep digging until you no longer recognize who you are. But what happens when the disrespect isn't verbal at all? When loyalty disappears, but the performance of love stays? Point number 4, seduction without loyalty or depth. Have you ever laid next to her, skin to skin, yet felt completely alone? She kisses you like you're the center of her world, but you don't feel safe. You feel replaceable, because her body is present but her soul is somewhere else. And deep down you sense it. This isn't love. It's a performance, a transaction masked as passion. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse seduction for connection and mistake attention for loyalty. This is where most men fall. Not because they're weak, but because they're wired to feel validated through intimacy. And some women know this. They give their body, but not their depth. They offer desire, but not devotion. They touch you, only to see if you'll chase what they'll never actually give. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Now ask yourself, what kind of man do you become when you keep tying your identity to women who only offer you temporary color, red lips, soft skin, fleeting warmth, then cold detachment, back and forth, until your self-worth rides the highs of desire and the lows of being ignored? The Stoics warned against being ruled by pleasure, not because they were emotionless, but because they knew how easily a man loses himself inside illusion. Take Seneca, one of the richest men in Rome, surrounded by power, luxury, even mistresses, yet he wrote more about self-restraint than indulgence. Why? Because he saw how quickly a man becomes a slave when he starts mistaking pleasure for peace. Now enter the modern arena. She invites you over. You feel chosen. She leans in, whispers, seduces, but the next day, her texts dry up, her loyalty is vague, her presence is conditional. And you start spiraling, thinking maybe if you were more fun, more dominant, more patient, she'd stay. But here's the brutal truth. Some women weaponize seduction to bypass your logic, to confuse your masculine control, to access the emotional power seat without ever offering loyalty in return. This is where Stoic detachment isn't just useful, it's necessary. Because if you can't control your mind in the face of pleasure, you're already being controlled. Emotional discipline isn't rejecting intimacy, it's refusing to trade your peace for it. So the next time you feel pulled into closeness that lacks clarity, pause. Ask yourself, does this moment feed my soul or just silence my emptiness? Because a woman who gives her body but not her loyalty isn't loving you, she's studying you. And if you can't tell the difference, what happens when her presence starts to feel like ownership? Point number 5, entitlement to your time, money, and energy. Have you ever felt guilty for simply putting yourself first? You cancel a plan to rest, she calls you selfish. You invest in your future, she says you're too focused on money. You asked for space, she accuses you of hiding something. Somewhere along the way, her needs became law, and your boundaries became betrayal. This is the slow theft men endure in silence, not through force, but through emotional contracts you never agreed to. She doesn't ask, she expects your time, your money, your energy, and the moment you hesitate, you're shamed, gaslit, or iced out. Most men confuse this for love, thinking it's normal to sacrifice without balance. But here's the Stoic truth. What you allow becomes your new identity. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And most men aren't living. They're performing. Performing for approval, for peace, for the illusion of being a good man in a rigged script. The Stoics lived by internal economy, giving their energy where it served virtue, not validation. Cato didn't flatter power. He withdrew from corrupt circles even when it cost him influence. Why? Because he knew the price of soul-deep fatigue. And that's what modern men feel, exhausted but unable to name it. Drained from holding up relationships that quietly feed off their self-sacrifice. Now fast forward to now. You're working overtime. She says, "You never make time for me." You buy her gifts. She hints they're not romantic enough. You give. She receives without pause. Not because she's malicious, but because you've taught her that your value comes from depletion. This is the trap of modern relationship power dynamics, where giving is noble until it becomes an expectation, and expectation becomes resentment. You don't need a woman to praise your effort. You need a life that respects your limits, because when a man forgets his value, he becomes fuel for someone else's fire. This is where Stoic detachment cuts clean. You don't argue. You don't explain. You recalibrate. Because emotional discipline means reclaiming your energy without apology. Not as punishment, as protection. So here's your challenge. Next time you feel drained, don't analyze her reaction. Analyze your pattern. What are you giving to prove you're enough? And what would happen if you stopped? Because a woman who feels entitled to your resources never truly saw your soul. And if she didn't value your peace, how will she ever respect your boundaries? But what if the next manipulation doesn't cost energy, but subtly rewrites who you think you are? Point number 6. Manipulation that feeds on your weak boundaries. Have you ever felt like you're slowly becoming someone you don't recognize? You used to be clear, focused, grounded, but now every decision feels like a negotiation. Every truth gets softened before it's spoken. You second-guess your tone. You avoid conflict. You shrink quietly. And still, she says you're too intense, too distant, too cold. This isn't love. It's manipulation dressed in emotional concern. Not the loud kind. Not the obvious kind. The kind that studies your patterns, then rewires them, little by little, until your frame bends just to avoid her disapproval. And the hardest part? You allowed it. Not out of weakness, but out of hope. You thought love meant compromise, but she didn't compromise. She adjusted you, until your silence became compliance. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not a master of himself." And manipulation only thrives where self-mastery is absent. Where a man fears being misunderstood more than he fears betraying himself. Where emotional boundaries aren't enforced but offered up, hoping to avoid tension. The Stoics knew that external chaos is nothing compared to internal betrayal. Look at Marcus Aurelius. He ruled Rome while facing daily betrayal, whispers of sedition, political traps, but he didn't panic because his decisions came from within, not from the approval of others. He didn't adjust his soul to match the crowd. He stayed still and let their noise pass. Now bring it into modern dating. You tell her you need time alone, she accuses you of hiding. You hold a boundary, she cries, shifts, guilt trips, and somewhere in that fog, you fold. You give her what she wants just to keep the peace. But that peace is your surrender. This is how manipulation feeds. Not by taking, by convincing you to offer yourself up piece by piece. And if you lack emotional discipline, you'll keep calling it love. You'll say, she's just emotional. You'll say, she needs reassurance. But the deeper truth? She's seeing how much of you she can bend before you break. This is where Stoic detachment must ignite. You don't detach from her to punish her. You detach from illusion, so you can see clearly. Because value as a man isn't about how much emotion you absorb. It's about how much truth you're willing to stand on, even when it costs you her comfort. So ask yourself, if every disagreement ends with you apologizing, who's really controlling your mind? And if she only respects you when you're soft, uncertain, and compliant, what happens when you finally speak with fire again? But what if silence isn't surrender? What if it's your final power? What happens when you stop reacting? Completely? Have you noticed the pattern yet? She tests you with softness. She erodes you through silence. She dresses disrespect as honesty. She gives her body but not her loyalty. She drains your time, money, and energy and calls it love. She shapes your identity through guilt, not growth. And through it all, you smile. You stay. You justify. Because deep down, you've been trained to believe that a man proves his worth by surviving the slow death of his own self-respect. But the Stoic doesn't survive it. He ends it. He sees the game for what it is, not with hatred, but with precision. Because when a man reclaims his emotional discipline, when he relearns Stoic detachment, when he stops trading his masculine frame for momentary approval, he doesn't just walk away from manipulation. He becomes untouchable by it. This is the silent evolution. Not louder, not colder, just clearer, calm, commanded, rooted. So if you've seen even a fraction of yourself in these signs, don't explain it away. Don't numb it. Train it. Sharpen it. Let this be the moment you stop being a reaction and start being the standard. Because a man who knows his value doesn't chase tests. He watches and walks. If you're ready to reclaim that mindset, if you're done mistaking chaos for connection, and you're ready to step into stillness, clarity, and control, then this channel is for you. Subscribe to Stoic Truth, where we don't teach men to escape pain, we train them to transform it. New videos weekly, no fluff, no fake empowerment, just unfiltered clarity for the men who are finally ready to see